My hand trembled as I dropped the conference call line, each word my son had spoken still echoing in my skull like shattered glass. Through the thin office walls, I'd heard everything. My mother? She's just a burden now. Always calling. Always needing something. Thank God she doesn't know about the executive meetings, or she'd probably show up trying to give advice like she knows anything about running a tech company. The laughter that followed felt like acid on my skin. If only Kellan knew that the signature on his promotion letter, the mysterious E.M. Voss he'd been trying to impress for months, was actually his supposedly clueless mother, Evelyn. The same woman he'd just dismissed as an embarrassment. But before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. People often ask me why I never told Kellan about Meridian dynamics, why I let him believe his father Dominic and I were just middle-class parents scraping by in our modest townhouse in Copper Falls. The truth starts 27 years ago, 3 months before Kellan was born, when my business partner tried to force me out of the neural interface company I'd built from my garage workshop. I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and they thought I was weak. They were wrong. Instead of fighting publicly, I restructured everything, created a web of holding companies, installed trusted executives as the face of operations, and disappeared into the background. To the world, I became Mrs. Evelyn Reeves, part-time bookkeeper, and full-time mother. But behind closed doors, I controlled 43% of what would become the largest biotech firm in the Northern Hemisphere. Kellan grew up thinking we lived paycheck to paycheck. He saw his father's construction business struggle through 2 recessions, watched me clip coupons and shop sales. What he didn't see were the board meetings I attended virtually at 3 a.m., the patents I reviewed while he slept, or the expansion strategies I crafted between his soccer practices. We chose this life deliberately. Dominic and I wanted Kellan to understand the value of hard work, to build character without the poison of entitlement. We watched too many privileged children destroy themselves with excess and arrogance. So we lived simply, loved deeply, and kept our secret. When Kellan graduated from Vanguard Institute with his bioengineering degree, he was brilliant, but unpolished. He joined Meridian's subsidiary, Nexus Innovations, as a junior researcher. No favors, no shortcuts. I watched through corporate channels, as he climbed the ranks through genuine talent and crushing hours. His innovations in synaptic mapping caught attention. His leadership skills emerged naturally. After 6 years, he earned his position as Deputy Director of Neural Applications. Then came the Oksana incident. She swept into his life like a designer hurricane. Oksana Petrov, daughter of a minor tech investor, had the kind of calculated beauty that came from expensive procedures and personal stylists. Within 3 months, she had Kellan proposing with a ring that cost more than our supposed annual income. I bit my tongue when she sneered at our quaint home, stayed silent when she suggested Kellan distance himself from his small-town parents to improve his corporate image. The wedding was everything Oksana wanted, lavish, exclusive, designed to impress rather than celebrate. She insisted on the Celestial Tower venue, demanded orchids flown in from Thailand, hired photographers from 3 different countries. When I offered to help with planning, she laughed in that tinkling way that never reached her eyes. "Evelyn, darling, I appreciate the thought, but this isn't some backyard barbecue. We need someone who understands luxury." Kellan stood there, silent, while his bride mocked the woman who'd built the empire he worked for. That silence cut deeper than her words. But the true transformation began after his promotion 4 months ago. Kellan had been selected for the coveted Director of Innovation position, reporting directly to the mysterious board of executives. His salary tripled. His office moved to the 40th floor. And Oksana's influence metastasized like a cancer. She redecorated their penthouse in what she called postmodern aristocratic style. Insisted they needed household staff, a butler, 2 maids, a personal chef, started hosting dinner parties for what she deemed important people, while systematically excluding us from their social calendar. "Your parents are sweet," I overheard her tell Kellan during one of our increasingly rare visits. "But they're not exactly executive material, are they? It might send the wrong message if they're too visible in our new circle." The boy I raised, who once defended a classmate from bullies despite being half their size, now just nodded. "You're right. We need to think about our image now." That's when the excuses started. Too busy for Sunday dinners. Travel schedules that always conflicted with family events. Phone calls that went straight to voicemail. When Dominic had his heart scare last spring, Kellan sent flowers but couldn't find time to visit the hospital. "Dad's fine, right?" He'd texted. "Big presentation tomorrow. Give him my best." I made excuses for him, even to myself. Success changes people temporarily. He'd find his way back to his values. Oksana's influence would fade once the novelty wore off. But each interaction became more strained, more formal, like we were distant acquaintances rather than family. Then came yesterday's call. I dialed into the executive meeting from my home office, as I often did under my anonymous credentials. The discussion focused on the upcoming merger with Synaptic Solutions, a deal I'd personally orchestrated over 18 months. Most attendees assumed E.M. Voss was either traveling or participating remotely by choice. Even my own executives had never met me face to face. Kellan's new position meant this was his first inclusion in such high-level discussions. His excitement was palpable through the speaker as he presented his integration proposals. They were good, brilliant, actually. My son had inherited my strategic mind along with his father's determination. The meeting concluded successfully, but instead of disconnecting, I heard another conversation begin. Kellan hadn't properly ended his call. "Impressive work, Reeves," said Harrison Blackwood, our chief operations officer. "You certainly didn't get this from your bookkeeper mother." The laughter that followed was collegial, the kind that bonds executives over shared superiority. I should have hung up then, should have spared myself what came next. "Thank God for that," Kellan replied, his voice carrying that new edge of arrogance I'd been trying to ignore. "Love her to pieces, but she still thinks successful business means balancing a checkbook. Last week, she actually tried to give me advice about workplace relationships." More laughter. My chest tightened. "Parents, right?" Harrison continued. "Mine still think I should have become a doctor. At least yours aren't constantly interfering." "Oh, they try," Kellan said. "Especially Mom. Always calling, always needing something. When are you visiting? Why haven't you called? Your father misses you." Oh, as if I don't have actual responsibilities now. "The burden of success," someone else chimed in. "Family becomes dead weight." "Exactly," Kellan agreed. "My mother's just a burden now. Thank God she doesn't know about the executive meetings. Or she'd probably show up trying to give advice like she knows anything about running a tech company. Could you imagine? Her organizing system is still a paper planner from the last century." The room erupted in laughter. My son's voice joined. Them. Rich with contempt for the woman who'd given him everything while pretending to have nothing. "Best to keep family at arm's length once you reach this level," Harrison advised. "They either want money or think they deserve credit for your success. Neither's conducive to advancement." "Already on it," Kellan assured them. "Oksana's been helping me establish proper boundaries. We're hosting the Ambassador's Circle dinner next month, strictly A-list only. No room for small-town relatives cramping our style." I terminated the connection with shaking hands. For several minutes, I sat in absolute stillness, letting the full weight of my son's words settle into my bones. Then I picked up my secure phone and dialed Margaret Zhao, my most trusted board member and the only executive who knew my true identity. "Evelyn?" Her voice carried decades of friendship and shared secrets. "What's wrong?" "It's time," I said simply. Schedule an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Full attendance required, including our newest director of innovation. Are you sure? Once you reveal... He called me a burden, Maggie. A burden who knows nothing about running a company. Her sharp intake of breath said everything. I'll send the notifications immediately. Mandatory attendance, no exceptions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. One more thing, I added. Have Davidson prepare a complete ownership breakdown. Every subsidiary, every patent, every holding company. I want Kellan to understand exactly what his burden of a mother built while he was playing with building blocks. That evening, Dominic found me in my study, surrounded by decades of carefully hidden documentation. He took one look at my face and understood immediately. He finally pushed too far. I nodded, showing him the board meeting agenda. 27. Years of secrets end Monday morning. He wrapped his arms around me, solid and comforting as always. Maybe it's time. The boy needs to learn who his mother really is. I'm not angry, I realized as I spoke. I'm disappointed. We raised him. Better than this. The promotion went to his head. Oksana's influence. No. I turned to face him. Kellan's a grown man. His choices are his own. But he's about to learn that actions have consequences, even for directors of innovation. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Kellan. Busy weekend ahead. Rain check on Sunday dinner. Important people to schmooze. You understand? I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my reply. Of course, dear. Actually, I have an important meeting Monday morning, too. Perhaps we'll both have stories to share afterward. His response came quickly. You finally joining that book club? Good for you, Mom. Nice to have hobbies at your age. I set the phone aside without answering. In 60 hours, my son would sit in the executive boardroom, probably still glowing. From his recent promotion, completely unaware that the mysterious E.M. Voss, whose approval he desperately sought, was about to walk through the door. The same door he believed his burden of a mother could never comprehend, let alone own. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kellan had spent 6 years trying to impress a phantom, crafting presentations for someone he'd never met, while dismissing the very person whose empire he served. He'd scorned the small-town values that built the foundation of his success, traded authenticity for Oksana's manufactured sophistication. Monday morning would bring revelation, but what followed would determine whether my son could find his way back to the person we raised him to be, or whether success had permanently poisoned the well of his character. As I drifted toward sleep, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Kellan was about to discover that the burden he so carelessly dismissed held the power to reshape his entire world. The only question remaining was whether he'd learn the lesson with humility or devastation. The meeting would begin at 9 sharp. By 9:15, nothing would ever be the same. Monday arrived wrapped in pewter skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that usually cleared my head. Today, it only sharpened the edge of what was coming. I dressed deliberately in the charcoal Armani suit I'd kept hidden in the back of my closet for 7 years, paired with the Cartier watch Dominic had given me when Meridian's stock first broke $500. My wedding rings came off, replaced by the D platinum signet bearing the Voss family crest, a detail no one at the company had ever connected to their phantom majority shareholder. The drive to Meridian's headquarters took 40 minutes, though I'd made this journey countless times before. Just never through the front door. My usual route involved service entrances and private elevators, meetings in secured conference rooms where my face never appeared, only my voice through encrypted channels. Today, I walked straight to the executive reception desk. I'm here. For the board meeting, I said simply. The receptionist, a young woman named Sadie who'd been with us for 3 years, glanced up with professional politeness that shifted to confusion. "I'm sorry, but the emergency board meeting is restricted access. Are you perhaps here for the marketing presentation on 32? No." I placed my signet ring on the marble counter, positioned so she could see the crest clearly. "Please, inform Mr. Davidson I've arrived." Her eyes widened as recognition dawned. The Voss crest was known to exactly 12 people in the building, all senior executives bound by ironclad NDAs. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers. "Mr. Davidson? Yes, sir. She's here. Yes, in person. The crest." A pause. "Right away, sir." Within seconds, James Davidson, our chief legal counsel and one of the few who knew my identity, burst through the security doors. His normally composed features cycled through shock, concern, and something like relief. "Evelyn, Mrs. Voss, we weren't expecting you to attend in person." "Plans change, James. Is everyone assembled?" "Yes, including Mr. Reeves. He arrived early, actually, quite eager to participate in his first emergency session." The irony drew a bitter smile. "I'm sure he is. Shall we?" The elevator ride to the 52nd floor passed in tense silence. James kept stealing glances, clearly bursting with questions he was too professional to ask. The doors opened to reveal the executive floor in all its minimalist glory, Italian. Marble, abstract sculptures, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Denver's skyline. "The board is this way." James gestured toward the frosted glass doors of the main conference room. Through the translucent barrier, I could see silhouettes of seated figures, including one I'd recognize anywhere. My son, positioned near the head of the table like a prince surveying his kingdom. I paused at the threshold. "James, the ownership." "Breakdown I requested?" He produced a leather portfolio. "Complete documentation as requested. Every subsidiary, every patent filing, the entire corporate structure." He hesitated. "Evelyn, are you certain about this approach? The shock alone." "My son needs to understand the weight of words, James. The cost of dismissing people you assume are beneath you." He nodded gravely and opened the door. The conversation inside died instantly. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward the entrance, their expressions shifting from curiosity to confusion. Kellan sat 3 seats from the head of the table, his new position reflecting his elevated status. He was mid-sentence, probably sharing some insight he thought would impress his colleagues. His eyes met mine, and I watched the precise moment. His corporate mask slipped. "Mom! What are you—" He stood abruptly, professional composure cracking. "Is everything okay? Is Dad—" "Your father's fine," I said evenly, walking toward the head of the table. "Please, sit down, Kellan." "But this is an executive meeting. Family members aren't—" He glanced around at his colleagues, clearly mortified. "Davidson, I apologize for the interruption. My mother must have gotten confused about—" "Mr. Reeves," Margaret Zhao interrupted smoothly, "I suggest you follow your mother's advice and sit down." The steel in her voice caught him off guard. Kellan looked between us, noting how the other executives weren't reacting with the same confusion. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. Others watched me with recognition dawning. "What's going on?" His voice carried the first hint of uncertainty. I reached the head of the table and remained standing. The leather chair reserved for the company's majority shareholder, my chair, stayed empty for now. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying the authority I'd hidden for so long. "Thank you for accommodating this emergency session. As you know, certain circumstances have necessitated an acceleration of our planned revelations regarding corporate structure and ownership." Harrison Blackwood shifted uncomfortably. He'd been among the voices laughing at my expense during that fateful call. Now sweat beaded on his forehead. "For those who haven't made the connection," I continued, opening the leather portfolio, "allow me to formally introduce myself. I am Evelyn Marie Voss, founder and majority shareholder of Meridian Dynamics, holding companies VM Enterprise, Quantum Holdings, and 17 subsidiary patents under the Nexus Innovations umbrella. The silence was absolute. Kellan's face had drained of color, his mouth slightly open as his brain struggled to process what he was hearing. That's impossible, he finally managed. E.M. Voss is the signatures, the board meetings, have been conducted remotely or through proxy for 27 years, I finished. Since 3 months before you were born, when certain parties attempted to force out a pregnant CEO they perceived as vulnerable. I began distributing copies of the ownership documents. As you'll see on page 4, I personally hold 43% of all voting shares, with additional family trusts controlling another 18%. This has been managed through a complex but legal network of holding companies to shield my identity from public knowledge. Why? The word exploded from Kellan like a wound. Why would you lie about everything? Let me believe that you were just middle class? Ordinary? A burden who knows nothing about running a tech company? I let each word land like a precision strike. Perhaps because I wanted to raise a son who understood the value of hard work, who wouldn't be corrupted by privilege before he could walk. Margaret cleared her throat. The board has been aware of Mrs. Voss's identity for varying lengths of time. Her strategic vision has guided Meridian from a garage startup to a $14 billion enterprise. The neural mapping patents alone, James added, sliding another document forward, generate over $300 million annually. Patents filed under E.M. Voss, with a home address listed as our garage in Copper Falls, Kellan whispered, staring at the papers like they might bite him. The summer I was 12, you were always out there, said you were reorganizing Dad's tools. I was optimizing synaptic transmission algorithms, the breakthrough that launched our biotech division. Each revelation hit him like a physical blow. I watched my son's worldview crumble, piece by piece, as documents piled before him proving his simple bookkeeper mother had built an empire while he played Little League. The synergy merger, he said suddenly, grasping for something familiar. I worked on that proposal for months. The board's mysterious directive to pursue neural interface applications. That was you? Every major strategic decision for the past 27 years has been me, Kellan, including the creation of your position 6 months ago. His face flushed red. Are you saying I didn't earn? You earned your promotions, I cut him off firmly. Every evaluation, every advancement was based solely on merit. I made sure of that. I wanted you to succeed on your own terms, to build genuine confidence. What I didn't expect was for that confidence to mutate into contempt for the very people who raised you. Harrison Blackwood attempted to slide lower in his chair, perhaps hoping I'd forgotten his role in Friday's conversation. I hadn't. Mr. Blackwood, I addressed him directly, you mentioned Friday that I was merely a bookkeeper who couldn't possibly understand corporate operations. Would you care to revise that assessment? His face resembled overripe fruit. Mrs. Voss, I had no idea the context. I sincerely apologize for any what? Disrespect? Mockery? Encouraging my son to view his family as burdens to be discarded? I let the questions hang in sterile air. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out after this meeting. Gasps circled the. Kellan half rose from his chair. Mother, you can't just. I own this company, I reminded him coldly. I can do exactly that. And it's Mrs. Voss in this boardroom, Director Reeves. He sank back, looking like a stranger wearing my son's face. The arrogant executive from Friday's call was crumbling, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Confused, humiliated, angry. The irony, I continued, addressing the room but watching Kellan, is that I attended Friday's merger discussion remotely, as usual. The meeting ended, but someone failed to properly disconnect their line. I heard every word of the subsequent conversation about family being dead weight, and mothers who are just burdens without any understanding of corporate life. If possible, Kellan paled further. His colleagues shifted uncomfortably, some shooting him sympathetic looks, others clearly distancing themselves from the fallout. 27 years, I said softly, but my voice carried to every corner. 27 years of board meetings at 3 a.m. so I could make your breakfast, of reviewing patents between your soccer games, of building this empire while pretending to, clip coupons to teach you the value of money. I placed both hands on the table, leaning forward slightly. And in return, my son tells a room of executives that I'm an embarrassment, that I might show up and humiliate him with my ignorance, that thank God I don't know about important meetings because I'd try to offer my worthless advice. I was trying to fit in, Kellan's voice cracked. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. I built this company from nothing. The words erupted with 27 years of suppressed truth. While pregnant with you, while fighting corporate vultures who thought motherhood made me weak, while revolutionizing neural interface technology from our garage, don't lecture me about pressure. Silence crashed down like a guillotine. I straightened, composing myself. But this isn't about hurt feelings. This is about character, values, and the future of Meridian dynamics. Someone who dismisses family as burdens, who mocks the very foundation of their success, who chooses image over integrity, is that someone we want representing our future? I turned to address the board directly. I moved to suspend Kellan Reeves from his position as Director of Innovation, pending a comprehensive review of his leadership capabilities and cultural fit. Seconded, Margaret said immediately. All in favor? I asked. Every hand rose except Kellan's. Even his allies couldn't defend him now. Motion carried. I finally took my seat at the head of the table. Mr. Reeves, you'll take a 6-month sabbatical to reassess your priorities. Your return will be contingent on demonstrating genuine understanding of our corporate values. Values that extend beyond profit margins and executive perks. Kellan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. This is revenge, pure and simple. You're punishing me for having ambition, for wanting more than what? A modest home with parents who love you? A father who taught you integrity? A mother who built a billion-dollar company while raising you to value kindness over categories? I met his angry gaze steadily. I'm not punishing you, Kellan. I'm trying to save you from becoming someone neither of us would recognize. I don't need saving, he spat, gathering his things with shaking hands. Especially not from someone who's been lying to me my entire life. The only lies, I said quietly, were the ones that protected you from turning into exactly who you've become. He stormed out, slamming the conference room door with enough force to rattle the glass. The remaining executives sat in stunned silence. The meeting is adjourned, I announced. James, please proceed with the termination paperwork for Mr. Blackwood. Margaret, I'll need transition plans for the Neural Applications Division by Wednesday. As the room emptied, Margaret lingered behind. That was harder than you expected. I stared at the door my son had slammed. He looked at me like I was his enemy. He's in shock. Give him time to process. Time isn't the issue, Maggie. It's whether anything of the boy I raised survived his rise to success. That evening, I returned to our modest townhouse in Copper. Falls, the home that had sheltered countless secrets and strategies, to find Dominic waiting in the kitchen. One look at my face told him everything. How bad? He called it revenge, accused me of punishing his ambition. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I suspended him for 6 months. Dominic whistled low. That'll make Sunday dinners awkward. Despite everything, I laughed, always finding humor in crisis. Someone has to. Tea? Something stronger. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, the good stuff we rarely touched, and joined me at the table. You know what this reminds me of? Enlighten me. Remember when Kellan was 8 and convinced himself he deserved a raise in his allowance because he'd made his bed for a whole week? Made it by shoving everything under it. Exactly. But he gave this whole presentation about increased responsibility and market rates for chores. Dominic smiled at the memory. When we said no, he accused us of not understanding economics. The irony being his mother had just negotiated a $50 million acquisition that morning. Point is, he's always been dramatic when his worldview gets challenged. This is just the adult version of that tantrum. My phone buzzed. A text from Kellan. Expect resignation letter tomorrow. We'll have lawyers review my contract termination clause. KR. Not Mom. Not even Kellan. Just initials, like I was any other corporate adversary. He's threatening to resign. I showed Dominic the message. Let him. Either he'll cool down and realize what he's throwing away, or he'll learn the hard way that other companies care more about connections than competence. That's surprisingly harsh. No, love. Harsh is what he said about you to impress people who aren't worth impressing. This is just consequences. 3 days passed without word from Kellan. His resignation letter never materialized, but neither did any attempt at contact. Oksana's social media, however, exploded with activity. Cryptic posts about betrayal from unexpected sources and finding out who people really are peppered her Instagram. The symphony of victimhood played out in carefully curated images of her comforting Kellan, interspersed with quotes about rising above adversity. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor to my real office, the one hidden behind a boutique investment firm's facade downtown. Darren Mathis, one of our youngest board members and Kellan's informal mentor, requested a private meeting. Mrs. Voss, he began, sitting across from my desk with obvious discomfort. I want to discuss Kellan's situation. Go on. He came to see me yesterday. He's struggling to process everything. The identity revelation, the suspension, the public nature of it all. Public? The board meeting was confidential. Darren shifted uncomfortably. Oksana posted something online. Nothing specific, but enough that people are asking questions. The executive floor is buzzing with rumors. Of course she did. I massaged my temples. What exactly did Kellan want from you? Advice, support, maybe an ally to advocate for. His immediate reinstatement. Darren met my eyes. I told him he needed to approach you directly, that whatever issues existed between you personally, the professional situation required honest dialogue. And his response? He said you'd made it clear he wasn't welcome in your world anymore. The words hit like ice water. I never said anything of the sort. I know, but Oksana's been reinforcing a narrative that you're trying to exile him from the only life he's known, that this is about control, not concern. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city I'd helped build while hiding in its shadows. He's 31 years old, Darren. At what point does he become responsible for distinguishing between his wife's poison and his mother's intentions? With respect, ma'am, you've just shattered his understanding of his entire life. His professional identity, his family history, his perception of reality, all undermined in a single morning. Has it occurred to you that he might need time to grieve what he thought was true? The observation struck a chord I'd been trying to silence. In my hurt and anger, had I failed to consider the psychological impact of my revelations? You think I was too harsh. I think you were a mother hearing her child dismiss her worth. No one could blame your reaction. But now that the initial shock has passed, perhaps there's room for a different approach? That afternoon, I drafted 6 different messages to Kellan, deleting each one. How do you reach out to a son who sees you as his adversary? How do you bridge a chasm created by both protection and pride? Finally, I sent, your old room is still the same. Dinner's at 6 if you want to talk. Just us. Mom. The reply came 3 hours later. Not ready. Need space. Space. The word echoed through our home that evening as Dominic and I ate dinner in unusual silence. 27 years of hidden identity had created a different kind of space. One I'd convinced myself was necessary. Now I wondered if I'd simply traded one distance for another. Henderson called, Dominic mentioned casually, referring to our family attorney. Oksana's been making inquiries about Kellan's trust fund. Of course she has. The prenup you insisted on is ironclad. She can't touch anything established before their marriage. I pushed food around my plate. Remember when he was 14 and broke his arm trying to impress that girl? What was her name? Bethany, the skateboarding incident. He was so embarrassed, made us promise not to tell anyone he fell attempting a basic trick. Said his reputation couldn't handle it. And now he's married to someone who broadcasts their private life like it's reality television. My phone lit up with a notification, a LinkedIn post from a tech industry gossip account. Sources confirm major upheaval at Meridian Dynamics. Executive suspended following mysterious board meeting. Family drama suspected. It's starting to leak, I showed Dominic. Let it. Maybe public speculation will force Kellan to address reality instead of hiding behind Oksana's narrative. The following Monday marked 1 week since the revelation. I was reviewing quarterly projections when James Davidson appeared in my doorway, looking grim. We have a situation. Kellan just filed a formal complaint with HR. Regarding hostile work environment, discrimination, and abuse of power. He's claiming you used your hidden position to publicly humiliate him and create an untenable professional situation. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing this new development. He's building a case for wrongful termination. Or trying to force a settlement that includes his reinstatement. Oksana's fingerprints are all over this strategy. Schedule a mediation session. Neutral location, professional arbitrator. If my son wants to treat this as a legal matter, we'll handle it. Through proper channels. Evelyn? No, James. He's chosen to weaponize corporate policy against his mother. Let's see how that plays out when faced with documented evidence of his statements and behavior. The mediation was set for Thursday afternoon at a law firm, specializing in corporate disputes. I arrived early, settling into the conference room with my legal team. The arbitrator, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Holloway, reviewed preliminary documents with professional detachment. Kellan entered 15 minutes late, Oksana at his side despite instructions that only principals and legal counsel should attend. She wore a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her expression carefully crafted to project wounded dignity. My wife is my support system, Kellan announced when Patricia questioned Oksana's presence. Given the family dynamics at play, I need her here. I noticed he avoided looking at me directly, addressing all comments to the arbitrator or the room at large. Very well, Patricia conceded. Let's begin. Mr. Reeves, you've filed a complaint alleging hostile work environment. Please elaborate. Kellan straightened, clearly prepared. On October 15th, I was summoned to an emergency board meeting under false pretenses. Upon arrival, my mother, who had concealed her identity as majority shareholder for my entire life, proceeded to humiliate me in front of senior executives, suspend me without due process, and terminate a colleague based on a private conversation. She'd eavesdropped on. I see. Mrs. Voss, your response? The board meeting was called to address a governance issue requiring disclosure of ownership structure. My son's suspension followed a unanimous vote based on his demonstrated attitudes toward stakeholders he deemed beneath his station, attitudes incompatible with our corporate values. She's twisting everything, Oksana interjected. Kellan made one casual comment in private, and she turned it into a public execution. Patricia held up a hand. Mrs. Reeves, please allow your husband to speak for himself. But I saw how Oksana's hand squeezed Kellan's knee under the table, how his jaw tightened before responding. My mother has never approved of my marriage, or my professional advancement. This was her way of putting me in my place. The accusation stung more than I expected. I never interfered with your marriage, Kellan. Despite watching your wife systematically alienate you from your family, I remained silent. Because you were planning this ambush all along, he shot back, finally meeting my eyes. Waiting for the perfect moment to reveal yourself as the puppet master pulling everyone's strings. Puppet master? I let incredulity color my voice. I built this company while raising you, specifically structuring my involvement to ensure you'd never receive special treatment. Every promotion you earned was validated by executives who had no idea you were my son. But you were always watching, weren't you? Judging. Waiting for me to fail your impossibly high standards. Patricia intervened. Let's review the specific incident that triggered the suspension. Mrs. Voss, you mentioned overhearing a conversation? I produced the transcript our legal team had prepared, carefully omitting any mention of how I'd been connected to the call. During a post-meeting discussion, my son referred to me as just a burden, who knew nothing about running a tech company. He expressed relief that I wasn't aware of executive meetings, as I might embarrass him with my ignorance. Kellan's carefully maintained composure cracked. Those were private comments taken out of context. I was trying to fit in with senior management, to speak their language. By denigrating the woman who built the company they work for? I kept my voice level despite the emotion threatening to break through. By laughing along as Harrison Blackwood called your father and me dead weight? I didn't know you owned the company. Would that have changed your words, or just your audience? Oksana jumped in again. This is emotional manipulation. She's trying to guilt him for having normal workplace conversations. I turned to her slowly. Normal workplace conversations include mocking family members, dismissing their worth based on perceived social status. Tell me, Oksana, is that what you've been teaching my son about professional behavior? Her perfect composure slipped for a moment, revealing something sharp and calculating underneath. I've been teaching him to think like an executive instead of a small-town nobody. The words hung in the air like a toxin. Even Kellan looked uncomfortable with his wife's outburst. Patricia cleared her throat. I think we should take a brief recess. Emotions are running high, and we need to refocus on the legal questions at hand. During the break, I stepped into the hallway for air. Through the glass walls, I could see Oksana gesticulating wildly at Kellan, her whispered words causing his shoulders to slump further with each sentence. Margaret appeared beside me. She's destroying him. He's letting her. Fear makes people cling to what feels familiar, even when it's toxic. You think he's afraid? Aren't you? The question caught me off guard. Was I afraid of losing my son completely? Of watching him transform into someone unrecognizable? Of admitting that perhaps my decades of secrecy had contributed to this moment? Every day, I admitted quietly. When we reconvened, Patricia steered the discussion toward potential resolutions. Mr. Reeves, what outcome are you seeking? Full reinstatement, Oksana answered before Kellan could speak. With a formal apology and compensation for emotional distress. I asked your husband, Mrs. Reeves. Kellan hesitated, glancing between Oksana and me. For a moment, I saw my little boy again, caught between competing desires, unsure which path to take. He started, then stopped. I want to understand why my entire life was built on lies. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in the room. They weren't lies, I said softly. They were choices, perhaps misguided ones. but made with love. Love? His voice broke. You let me struggle. Let me doubt myself. Let me believe we were barely making ends meet. We let you develop resilience, independence, appreciation for what you earned rather than what you were given. You let me become a joke. The words exploded from him. Do you know how they'll see me now? The owner's son who didn't even know it? Who spent years trying to impress his own mother? I'm either a fool or a fraud, and either way, my career is over. Your career is what you make it, I countered. The question is whether you'll build it on authentic capability or on the shallow approval of people like Harrison Blackwood. Oksana's laugh was sharp and bitter. Authentic capability? From the woman who's been play-acting poverty for 3 decades? I turned to her fully. I've been protecting my son from turning into someone who measures worth in dollars and connections. Clearly, I failed. You certainly did, she smirked. He married me, didn't he? The admission was so baldly cynical that even Kellan looked shocked. In that moment, watching his face as his wife revealed her true nature, I saw the first crack in his armor of denial. Patricia wisely moved to conclude the session. I'll need time to review all materials and prepare recommendations. We'll reconvene next week unless both parties reach an independent resolution. As we gathered our things, Kellan lingered behind. Oksana tugged at his arm, but he gently pulled away. Give me a minute, he told her. She huffed but complied, though her glare could have melted steel. Once alone, Kellan finally looked at me directly. Did you ever consider telling me? Even once? Every single day. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And that's something I'll have to live with. He nodded slowly, then asked in a smaller voice, Is my old room really still the same? My heart clenched. Even the participation trophies you begged us to throw away. The ghost of a smile touched his lips before vanishing. I need time. To think. Take all you need. But Kellan? I caught his arm gently. Think with your own mind, not through someone else's agenda. He glanced toward the door where Oksana waited, then back to me. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm not sure I remember how. That night, Dominic and I sat on our back porch, looking at stars barely visible through the city's glow. The same. Stars we'd watched with Kellan years ago, making up constellations and dreaming about futures that seemed impossibly distant. He's starting to see through her, I told Dominic about the mediation. Starting isn't finishing. She's got hooks in. Deep. You sound like you've been thinking about this. He sipped his beer thoughtfully. Remember when Kellan was 19? That summer he worked construction with me? You came home every day complaining he was too soft for manual labor. No, I came home worried he was too eager to impress. The wrong people. The crew supervisor was a piece of work. Racist, sexist, complete bully. But Kellan laughed at his jokes, mimicked his behavior, all to fit in. I don't remember this. Because I handled it quietly. Took him aside one evening and asked if he actually found those jokes funny. He broke down, admitted he hated every minute but thought that's what men did on job sites. That being accepted meant becoming someone else. What did you tell him? That changing yourself for acceptance is like building a house on sand. Might look stable for a while, but the first storm will show you what's real. I leaned into his shoulder. You think Oksana is his storm? I think she's the sand. You're the storm, love. And you're showing him exactly how unstable his foundation really is. The metaphor settled into my bones as truth. I'd spent 27 years building a fortress of secrets to protect my son, only to become the very force that threatened his carefully constructed identity. Maybe I should have let him fail more, I mused. Let him see the ugly side of wealth and privilege firsthand. Maybe. But we made choices based on love, not strategy. Can't fault ourselves for not predicting every outcome. My phone buzzed, with a message from Margaret. PR crisis brewing. Former employees reaching out to media about ownership revelation. Need damage control strategy ASAP. The outside world wouldn't wait for our family drama to resolve. Meridian stock would react to uncertainty, competitors would smell blood, and the narrative would spin beyond our control if we didn't act quickly. I need to call in all hands. Meeting, I told Dominic. Address the company directly before speculation spirals. And Kellan? We'll have to decide if he's part of Meridian's future or just another external critic. The company-wide video conference was scheduled for Monday morning. I spent the weekend crafting my message, balancing transparency with discretion, acknowledging change while projecting stability. Sunday evening, my phone rang. Kellan's name appeared for the first time since the revelation. Mom? His voice sounded younger, uncertain. I'm here. I saw the announcement about tomorrow's meeting. Are you going to discuss my situation? Only as it pertains to organizational structure. Your personal matters remain private unless you choose otherwise. A long pause. Oksana thinks I should file an injunction to stop the meeting. What do you think? I think. Another pause. I think I'm tired of other people thinking for me. My heart lifted slightly. That's a good place to start. Would it be okay if I attended? Not as an executive, just, I want to hear what you say. Who you really are when you're not being my mother. You're always welcome, Kellan. But understand, tomorrow I'm addressing my company as its founder. The message won't be softened for anyone's comfort. I wouldn't expect it to be. After we hung up, I found myself standing in Kellan's childhood room. Everything remained frozen in time. Soccer trophies, science fair medals, a bulletin board covered in concert tickets and movie stubs, evidence of a boy who'd been loved, supported, encouraged to dream. On his desk sat a framed photo from his college graduation. Dominic and I flanked him, our pride evident despite our carefully middle-class appearance. I'd worn a department store dress that day, hiding the Cartier watch in my purse, playing the part of the ordinary mother celebrating her son's achievement. Had that been love or manipulation, protection or deception? The lines blurred with each passing day. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I entered Meridian's headquarters through the main entrance, no longer hiding behind service elevators and secret passages. Employees did double takes as I passed, whispers following in my wake. The broadcast studio on the 40th floor had been prepared for company-wide addresses. As technicians finalized equipment checks, I noticed movement in the observation booth. Kellan stood behind the glass, alone, watching. 30 seconds, Mrs. Voss, the production manager announced. I straightened my blazer, touched the Voss family crest now openly worn on my lapel, and faced the cameras. Good morning. I'm Evelyn Voss, founder and majority shareholder of Meridian Dynamics. For 27 years, I've led this company from the shadows, a choice made to protect both personal privacy and corporate integrity. Recent events have necessitated transparency, and I'm here today to address your questions and concerns. The red light glowed. Across the company, thousands of employees watched their phantom leader materialize. Meridian began in a garage, in Copper Falls, born from a belief that neural interface technology could transform human potential. While pregnant with my son, I faced a hostile takeover attempt from investors who saw motherhood as weakness. Rather than surrender, I restructured our ownership, creating a network of holdings that preserved my control while allowing me to raise my family outside the spotlight. I glanced toward the booth. Kellan remained motionless, absorbing every word. This unconventional approach enabled Meridian to grow without the typical constraints of public scrutiny or dynastic interference. Every major strategic decision, every innovation milestone, Every cultural initiative has been guided by the same principles that founded this company: innovation through integrity, success through substance, and growth through genuine merit. I paused, letting the words settle across conference rooms and computer screens throughout the building. Recent internal changes have sparked speculation and concern. Let me be clear. Meridian's leadership structure remains stable. Our strategic direction is unchanged. The temporary suspension of one executive reflects our commitment to maintaining corporate values, not a shift in organizational priorities. Through the glass, I saw Kellan's posture stiffen at the mention of his suspension. But he didn't leave. To those questioning why I chose anonymity for so long, I offer this perspective. True leadership isn't about personal recognition. It's about creating systems that outlive individuals, fostering talent that surpasses teachers, and building legacies that transcend ego. The teleprompter scrolled with carefully crafted corporate speak, but I departed from the script. However, I've learned that secrets, even those born from good intentions, carry their own weight. They create distances we don't intend and walls we can't always tear down. As we move forward with greater transparency, I ask for your patience and continued dedication to the mission that unites us. I concluded with logistics about reporting structures and upcoming town halls, then the red light dimmed. The studio erupted in quiet efficiency as technicians powered down equipment. When I looked toward the observation booth, Kellan was gone. "Excellent delivery, Mrs. Voss," the production manager said. "The response metrics are already showing positive engagement." I nodded absently, my mind on the empty booth. Had my words reached him? Or had I simply widened the chasm between us? Margaret met me in the executive corridor. Legal wants to discuss the emerging media situation. Apparently, Harrison Blackwood is shopping a tell-all interview. Of course. He is. What's his angle? Wrongful termination, hostile work environment, and hints about dynasty politics at Meridian. I sighed. Schedule a meeting with legal and PR. We need to get ahead of this narrative. As we walked, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your son needs you, not the CEO, not the strategist, just you. A friend. Everything. Okay? Margaret noticed my frown. Anonymous life advice, apparently. Delete it. You've got enough real problems without cryptic messages. But something about the text nagged at me. The area code was local. The tone felt familiar. That afternoon, while reviewing legal strategies to counter Harrison's potential media campaign, James Davidson interrupted with unexpected news. Kellan's here. He's asking to see you privately. Send him in. James hesitated. He seems different. Calmer, maybe? Kellan entered moments later, and I saw what James meant. The defensive anger had faded, replaced by something more contemplative. He carried a manila folder and wore casual clothes instead of his usual executive armor. Thank you for seeing me, he began formally, then caught himself. That sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Thanking my mother for her time. Sit down, Kellan. He chose the chair across from my desk rather than the couch, maintaining professional distance even in private. I watched your address this morning. And I realized something. I've spent 6 years trying to impress a ghost. Every presentation, every innovation, every late night, all to catch the attention of the mysterious E.M. Voss. He laughed without humor. Turns out I was just trying to make my mother proud. The vulnerability in his voice cracked my professional composure. You did. You always have. Have I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I became exactly what you tried to prevent. Arrogant, status-obsessed, willing to mock the very values you instilled. I studied my son, really looked at him for the first time since this began. The designer clothes seemed to hang differently, like costume pieces he was ready to shed. What's in the folder? He slid it across the desk. My resignation, already signed. My heart lurched. Kellan, please let me finish. He held up a hand. I've spent the weekend reviewing everything. Not just the recent events, but my entire trajectory since joining Meridian. The person I've become, the choices I've made, the relationships I've damaged. He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Do you know what Oksana said after the mediation? She called you a master manipulator who'd been playing chess with people's lives. Said the only way to win was to flip the board entirely. By resigning? By walking away from all of it, the company, the family money, you. I felt the blood drain from my face. Is that what you want? It's what she wants. He turned back to face me. Last night she presented me with an ultimatum. Choose her or choose you. Said I couldn't have both anymore. The cruelty of forcing such a choice shouldn't have surprised me, yet it did. And what did you decide? Instead of answering directly, he pulled out his phone and showed me a text exchange. Oksana's messages were walls of manipulation, threats, pleas, accusations of betrayal. His final response was simple. I choose truth. She's moving out, he continued quietly. Already contacted a lawyer. Apparently the prenup you insisted on is unconscionable, and she'll be challenging it. I'm sorry. Don't be. You saw what I couldn't, or wouldn't. He returned to the chair, suddenly looking exhausted. But I meant what I said about resigning. Not as some dramatic gesture, but because I need to figure out who I am without Meridian defining me. I picked up the resignation letter, feeling its weight. You're sure? I spent my whole career chasing validation from a phantom. Now that the phantom has a face, your face, I realize I need to find my own path. And what does that path look like? I don't know yet. Maybe that's the point. He smiled slightly. For the first time in years, I'm okay with not having a 5-year plan. I placed the letter in my drawer without signing it. I'll hold this for now. Take your sabbatical as intended. If you still want to resign in 6 months, we'll process it then. That's generous. That's motherhood. The word hung between us, heavy with everything it represented. Love, protection, disappointment, hope. Mom, he started, then stopped, struggling with words. I said terrible things, not just in that meeting, but for months before. The way I let Oksana talk about you and Dad, the jokes I laughed at, the visits I canceled. You were building a life you thought you wanted. I was building a lie, just like you built yours, except mine was shallow and self-serving while yours protected something real. The parallel struck deep. We'd both constructed false realities, but for vastly different reasons. Where will you go? I asked. Uncle Stephen offered me his cabin in Vale. Thought I might spend some time there, clear my head. Maybe write or learn woodworking or just sit still for the first time since college. Stephen was Dominic's brother, a man who'd chosen teaching over corporate life despite having an engineering degree from Princeton. He'd always been the family philosopher, the one who asked uncomfortable questions at holiday dinners. He's good at untangling complicated thoughts, I observed. Yeah. He was the one who texted you earlier, about me needing my mom. Not the CEO. So that explained the familiar tone. Stephen had always been protective of family bonds. I should be angry with him for interfering. Are you? Grateful, actually. Though I'll never admit it to his face. Kellan's laugh was genuine this time. God, I've missed this. Missed what? Talking to you? Really talking, not performing or positioning or trying to impress. He leaned forward. Do you know what I remembered this weekend? That summer when I was 12 and you were supposedly reorganizing Dad's tools in the garage? The neural mapping breakthrough. I snuck out one night because I heard typing. Found you surrounded by whiteboards covered in equations I couldn't begin to understand. You were so focused you didn't notice me watching. You never mentioned this. I was confused. Couldn't reconcile the mom who made Mickey Mouse pancakes with the person solving complex algorithms at midnight. So I convinced myself I'd imagined it or misunderstood what I saw. Children are remarkably good at accepting whatever reality adults present. Until they're not. He stood again, restless energy returning. I'm 31 years old, and I just discovered my entire understanding of my family was fiction. Do you have any idea how destabilizing that is? Actually, yes. When I was 29, 3 months pregnant with you, I discovered my business partner had been secretly negotiating to sell majority control to a competitor. Everything I thought I knew about professional trust evaporated in a single boardroom meeting. Is that when you decided to disappear? That's when I decided visibility was vulnerability. If people couldn't find the real power, they couldn't corrupt it. But the cost was higher than I calculated. I thought I was protecting you from privilege. Instead, I may have denied you the truth you needed to make informed choices. We sat in companionable silence, years of careful distance slowly dissolving. There's something else, Kellan said eventually. When I was reviewing company history last night, I found references to the Quantum Resonance Project from 2015, the one that failed spectacularly. I tensed. That project had cost us millions and nearly fractured the board's confidence. I led that disaster, he continued, pushed for rapid deployment against advisory warnings. The failure was entirely my fault. I know. You knew. But the review board cleared me of responsibility. Because I instructed them to. You were learning, taking calculated risks. The failure taught you more than success ever could. You protected me even then. Mothers don't stop protecting their children just because they grow up. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. I accused you of sabotaging my career, of being jealous of my success. God, what kind of son? A hurt one, a confused one, a human one. How can you forgive so easily? Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Besides, forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing a different future. My phone buzzed with urgent messages from legal. The Harrison situation was escalating, with reporters now camped outside the building. I should let you handle that. Kellan moved toward the door. Wait. I made a split-second decision. Want to see how crisis management really works? His eyebrows rose. You're inviting me into the war room? Consider it an education in corporate defense. No obligations, just observation. I'd like that. The next 3 hours provided Kellan an unfiltered view of executive decision-making. He watched as we crafted media responses, deployed legal countermeasures, and strategically leaked information to friendly journalists. Throughout it all, he remained silent but attentive, occasionally jotting notes. As the immediate crisis stabilized, Margaret pulled me aside. Interesting choice, bringing him in. He needs to understand what he's walking away from. Or what he might return to. That's his decision. I'm just providing data points. She smiled knowingly. Right. Pure strategy. No maternal agenda whatsoever. After the team dispersed, Kellan and I found ourselves alone again. That was... He searched for words. Illuminating. You built an incredible machine here. We built it. Every employee, every innovation, every failure that taught us something new. Do you ever regret it? The empire, the secrecy, all of it? I considered carefully. I regret the distance it created between us. But the company itself? No. Meridian has improved millions of lives through our technology. That impact transcends personal complications. Noble, practical. Legacy isn't about monuments to ego. It's about ripples that continue long after we're gone. He gathered his things, preparing to leave. I'll be at the cabin by tomorrow evening. Uncle Stephen says the leaves are changing, peak autumn colors. Your father loves that area, claims the fishing's therapeutic. Maybe he could visit, if you can. Spare him from whatever secret projects you two are running. I smiled at the gentle probe. We're just regular retirees living on a fixed income, remember? Right. Because regular retirees definitely have encrypted phone lines and visit mysterious office buildings. You noticed that? I noticed everything, just processed it through the wrong lens. At the door, he hesitated. Mom? That dinner invitation? The one about my old room being the same? Is it still open? Always. Maybe when I get back from Vale, when I have better answers about who I want to be. Come for dinner, not answers. We can figure out the rest together. He nodded, then surprised me by stepping forward for a quick, awkward hug. The first physical contact since the revelation. After he left, I sat alone in my office, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The resignation letter remained in my drawer, unsigned but present, like a question waiting for its answer. My phone rang. Dominic. How did it go? He's finding himself, going to Stephen's cabin to think. Ah, the family retreat for existential crises. Good choice. He hugged me goodbye. Progress. And left his resignation letter. Unsigned but written. He'll be back. You sound certain. Because he's our son. He has your strategic mind and my stubborn loyalty. Once he clears away Oksana's influence and his own bruised ego, he'll remember who raised him. And if he doesn't, then we'll love him anyway, from whatever distance he needs. That night I couldn't sleep. I found myself in Kellan's old room again, this time really looking at the artifacts of his childhood. A science fair project on renewable energy, essays about ethical leadership, birthday cards where he'd written elaborate promises to make the world better. The boy who'd written those words was still in there, buried under layers of ambition and outside influence. I had to believe that truth, like water, eventually found its way to the surface. My laptop chimed with an encrypted message from one of our Asian divisions, a breakthrough in synaptic processing that could revolutionize memory disorders. The work never stopped. The future never paused for personal drama. But for once, I closed the laptop without reading further. Tonight, I was just a mother missing her son, hoping the space between us could somehow bridge what secrets had severed. 3 weeks passed in careful silence. Kellan sent occasional texts, photos of mountain, vistas, mentions of books he was reading, casual updates that avoided deeper topics. Oksana's lawyers, meanwhile, unleashed a barrage of legal challenges against the prenuptial agreement, claiming everything from undue influence to unconscionability. She's fishing, James reported during our weekly legal briefing. Looking for any crack in the document structure. She won't find one. I learned long ago that proper paranoia prevents most problems. Her latest filing suggests you somehow manipulated Kellan into the marriage to maintain corporate control. I actually laughed. Yes, because forcing my son to marry a status-obsessed social climber was definitely my master plan. The narrative doesn't have to be logical, just inflammatory. She's courting media attention, painting herself as the victim of a corporate dynasty's machinations. Let her. Truth has a way of outlasting theatrics. Harrison Blackwood's tell-all interview aired that Thursday on a major business network. He painted Meridian as a shadow corporation, run by a reclusive puppet master, who used family members as pawns in elaborate power games. The real scandal, he dramatically declared, is how shareholders were deceived for decades about who really controlled their investments. Our stock dipped 3 points before Margaret's PR team countered with a press release highlighting Meridian's consistent performance and transparent governance structure. By market close, we'd recovered most losses. Harrison's burning every bridge in the industry, Margaret noted with satisfaction. No one will touch him after this performance. Desperation makes people reckless. Speaking of reckless, Oksana's been spotted at Latitude with Chandler Morrison. Chandler Morrison, tech venture capitalist and Kellan's former rival for a coveted board position. The timing wasn't coincidental. She's already moving on to her next target, I observed, while still trying to extract maximum value from the current one. Efficient. My phone buzzed with a message from Kellan. Watching the interview. Sorry you're dealing with this circus. Also, Chandler Morrison. Really? She couldn't even wait for the divorce papers to dry? I showed Margaret, who grinned. He's tracking industry gossip from a mountain cabin. Boy's not as disconnected as he wants you to think. That evening, Dominic and I attended a charity gala we couldn't politely avoid. The ballroom buzzed with barely concealed speculation about Meridian's recent drama. I'd grown accustomed to operating in shadows. Being the center of whispered conversations felt uncomfortably exposing. Evelyn, Miranda Blackstone, society maven and information broker, cornered me near the bar. So fascinating to finally meet the woman behind the myth. Tell me, how does it feel to emerge from decades of secrecy? Rather like a deep-sea creature adjusting to surface pressure, I replied smoothly. Disorienting but necessary. And your son's situation? Such a scandal. Family matters remain private, Miranda. Surely you understand. She leaned closer, breath heavy with champagne. But darling, everyone's talking about how you orchestrated his downfall, the ultimate power play. Everyone's wrong. I smiled, with practiced warmth. Excuse me, I see someone I need to greet. I escaped to the terrace where Denver's skyline glittered against the dark mountains beyond. The same mountains where Kellan was finding his clarity. Hiding already? Dominic found me in the shadows. Reconnoitering, different thing entirely. Miranda cornered you about Kellan. Apparently I'm a Machiavellian genius who destroyed my own son for corporate gain. Well, you are a genius. The rest is projection. Sometimes I wonder if complete honesty from the start would have prevented all this. Or created different problems. Can't rewrite history, love. Can only choose better futures. A commotion. Inside drew our attention. Through the glass doors, I saw Oksana making an entrance on Chandler Morrison's arm. She wore a dress that cost more than most cars, her smile sharp as crystal. Bold move, Dominic muttered. Calculated. She wants witnesses to her brave recovery from our supposed oppression. Should we leave? And give her the satisfaction? Never. We returned inside just as Oksana noticed us. Her eyes glittered with malicious delight as she steered Chandler in our direction. Evelyn! Dominic! She air-kissed like we were old friends. How wonderful to see you. Have you met Chandler? Mr. Morrison. I nodded politely. Mrs. Voss? The legendary phantom of Meridian. His smile reminded me of a shark circling prey. I've followed your company's trajectory with great interest. How flattering. Oksana's laugh tinkled falsely. Chandler's been so supportive during this difficult transition. Unlike some people, he understands that a woman's worth isn't tied to her marital status. Indeed, I replied. Worth is intrinsic, not assigned by others. Exactly, which is why I refuse to be defined by Kellan's abandonment. She clutched Chandler's arm dramatically. When a man chooses his mother over his wife, it says everything about his character. Dominic's hand found mine under the table, a silent reminder to maintain composure. Character reveals itself in many ways, I said evenly. Often when we least expect it. Chandler, perhaps sensing the undercurrents, tried to redirect. I understand Meridian's pursuing the synapse integration aggressively, ambitious timeline. Ambition balanced with prudence. The best innovations require both. Of course, though I hear your recent Organizational changes might impact execution. Fishing for inside information. Meridian's leadership structure remains robust. Individual departures don't diminish institutional capability. Oksana's smile turned predatory. Speaking of departures, has anyone heard from Kellan lately? I do worry about him, isolated in those mountains like some sort of hermit. Growth often requires solitude, I replied. The mountains have a way of clarifying what matters. Or driving people mad with loneliness, she countered. But then, maybe madness runs in his family. No offense, Evelyn. The calculated insult landed exactly as intended. Around us, conversation dimmed as people sensed drama unfolding. None taken, I said sweetly. After all, genius and madness are often confused by those who possess neither. Chandler nearly choked on his champagne. Oksana's perfect facade cracked for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. Enjoy your evening, I continued, taking Dominic's arm. The shrimp towers are exceptional this year. We glided away, leaving her sputtering in our wake. Genius and madness? Dominic murmured as we moved through the crowd. Bit harsh, wasn't it? She questioned our son's sanity. I merely provided perspective. Remind me never to cross you in public, or private. We made strategic rounds, greeting key investors and partners, deflecting gossip with practiced ease. But the evening's strain accumulated like sediment, weighing heavier with each forced smile. Near midnight, my phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then noticed the area code, Vale. Excuse me, I told Dominic, stepping onto a quiet balcony. Mom? Kellan's voice carried the slight echo of a poor connection. Is everything all right? It's late. I know, I saw something online about a charity thing tonight. Pictures of Oksana with Chandler Morrison. She's wearing the necklace I gave her for our anniversary. The one I saved for 6 months to buy. I heard the hurt beneath his casual tone. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's clarifying, you know? Seeing how quickly she moved on makes me wonder if she ever really... He stopped himself. Anyway, that's not why I called. Why did you call? Uncle Stephen and I were talking tonight about authenticity. About how we construct different versions of ourselves for different audiences. He mentioned something you used to say when I was young. The truth doesn't need costumes. I'm surprised you remember that. I remember everything. I just interpreted it all wrong. Thought you were talking about other people being fake, not warning me against becoming inauthentic myself. The night breeze carried distant music from the ballroom, mixing with mountain wind through the phone connection. Kellan, whatever Oksana does now, doesn't matter. I mean, it stings, but it's not about her anymore. It's about who I let myself become. Who I'm choosing to be now. And who is that? Still figuring it out. But someone who doesn't need to mock his family to feel important. Someone who values substance over surface. That sounds like a good start. I miss you, he said quietly. Both of you. Not the CEO, not the secret billionaire. Just my parents. Tears threatened my carefully maintained composure. We miss you too. I'll be home next week. Maybe we could have that dinner. I'll make your favorite lasagna. The one with the secret ingredient you won't tell anyone? That's the one. After we hung up, I stood alone with the night sky, feeling something shift inside me. The weight of secrets, the burden of protection, all of it seemed less important than the simple truth of a son finding his way home. Inside, the gala continued its swirl of ambition and artifice. But for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely light. Kellan was choosing his own path, free from Oksana's influence and my well-intentioned deceptions. Dominic found me on the balcony. Good news? Our son's coming home for dinner next week. That's all? That's everything. The next morning brought a flurry of legal documents from Oksana's team, each more aggressive than the last. Her latest strategy involved claims of emotional abuse and systematic isolation from support networks. She's alleging you deliberately undermined their marriage from the start, James explained during our morning briefing, painting a picture of a controlling mother-in-law who couldn't let go. Creative fiction has always been her strength. Unfortunately, some of it might resonate with the court. The timing of your revelation, right after Kellan's promotion, could be construed as deliberately destabilizing. So I should have continued living a lie indefinitely. I'm not saying it's rational, just that it's a narrative she can sell. Margaret interrupted with breaking news. Harrison's been arrested. What? Securities fraud? Apparently, he was shorting Meridian stock before his interview aired. The SEC's been investigating for weeks. I sat back, processing this development. So his entire performance was market manipulation? Looks that way. And here's the interesting part. Guess who tipped off the SEC? Enlighten me. Chandler Morrison. The implications rippled through my mind. Chandler, now conveniently dating Oksana, had betrayed Harrison, his supposed ally in criticizing Meridian. He's eliminating competition, I realized, taking out Harrison while positioning himself as Oksana's savior. And potentially gaining inside information about Meridian through her, James added. Except Oksana knows nothing substantial about our operations, Margaret countered. Kellan never brought work home. Because I taught him that lesson early, I murmured. Some walls protect both sides. My phone lit up with a message from Kellan. Saw the news about Harrison. Karma's efficient sometimes. Also started writing something. Not sure what yet, but it feels important. I shared the message with my team. He's finding his voice again. The real question, James said carefully, is whether he'll use it to support or challenge Meridian's future. Either way, it'll be his authentic choice. That's all I've ever wanted. The week passed in a blur of legal maneuvering and corporate damage control. Harrison's arrest shifted public narrative in our favor. Suddenly, his allegations seemed tainted by criminal intent. Our stock rebounded, actually closing higher than pre-crisis levels. Thursday afternoon, Kellan texted that he was driving back from Vail. See you tomorrow for dinner, bringing dessert and difficult questions. Looking forward to both, I replied. That evening, Dominic and I prepared the house with nervous energy. I made Kellan's favorite lasagna. The secret ingredient was nutmeg, though I'd never admit it. While Dominic selected wines with excessive care. You're fussing, he observed as I adjusted table settings for the third time. I'm preparing. For dinner or an interrogation? Maybe both. He said he's bringing difficult questions. Good. Easy questions never lead to real understanding. The doorbell rang at exactly 6, punctual like his father. When I opened it, Kellan stood, there holding a bakery box and wearing the sweater I'd knitted him 5 Christmases ago. The prodigal son returns, he said with a self-deprecating smile. The door was never locked. He stepped inside, pausing in the foyer to look around. It's exactly the same. Some things shouldn't change, and some things must. He met my eyes meaningfully. Dinner began with careful small talk, his time in the mountains, Stephen's latest philosophical tangents, the early snow in Vail. But I could see him building toward something weightier. Finally, over Dominic's perfectly decanted Bordeaux, Kellan set down his fork. I need to understand something. The decision to hide your identity, was it just about protecting me from privilege, or was there more? I'd expected this question, yet it still struck deep. Initially, it was survival. The hostile takeover attempt made me realize how vulnerable visible power could be, especially for a pregnant woman in tech. But as you grew older, it became about values. What values? Exactly? Humility, empathy, the ability to see people for who they are, not what they can offer. Wealth insulates, Kellan. It creates barriers between you and authentic human experience. But poverty can do the same thing, just differently. We were never poor. We were selective about display. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that. The performance of middle class versus actual struggle. We had security, education, opportunities. Just not the trappings. Do you resent that? I did. Now. I'm not sure. I see kids I grew up with who inherited everything and produced nothing. Trust fund babies who confused net worth with self-worth. He paused. Like Oksana, maybe? Dominic and I exchanged glances but remained silent. The thing is, Kellan continued, I chose her. Whatever her flaws, whatever her agenda, I proposed. I participated in becoming someone I don't recognize. We all choose poorly sometimes, Dominic offered. The measure is what we do after recognizing the mistake. Which brings me to my next question. Kellan reached into his jacket and produced a small notebook. I've been writing. Not just journaling, actual analytical work about corporate culture, family businesses, the psychology of inherited wealth. He slid the notebook across the table. I opened it to find pages of dense text, diagrams, philosophical inquiries mixed with business theory. It started as anger, he admitted, trying to understand what happened to us, to me. But it evolved into something else, a framework for thinking about succession, legacy, the transfer of values alongside assets. I flipped through pages, impressed by the depth of analysis. This is sophisticated work. I had a good teacher, even if I didn't know it at the time. What do you plan to do with this? That depends. He took a deep breath. I want to write a book, not a tell-all exposé, God knows we have enough of those, but a serious examination of family enterprises, the challenges of raising children in unusual circumstances, the balance between protection and preparation. Using Meridian as a case study? Using us as a case study, all of us with permission, the successes and failures, the intentions versus outcomes. I closed the notebook, considering. That would require brutal honesty from everyone involved. I know. That's why I'm asking, not assuming. Your story, your real story, deserves to be told properly. And you think you're the one to tell it? I think I'm the only one who can tell it from all angles. The insider who didn't know he was inside. The heir who rejected his inheritance. The son who had to lose his mother to find her. Dominic reached for my hand under the table. What would you need from us? Interviews, documents, the raw truth about decisions made and roads not taken. Maybe even collaboration on certain chapters. And Meridian's secrets? Only what's relevant to the themes. I'm not interested in exposing competitive intelligence or undermining the company. This is about family dynamics in high-stakes environments, not corporate espionage. I studied my son's face, seeing echoes of the boy who once spent entire weekends building elaborate Lego cities, planning every detail with methodical care. You're serious about this. More serious than I've been about anything in years, maybe ever. What about your position at Meridian, the resignation letter? That's the other thing I wanted to discuss. He straightened in his chair. I don't want to come back as Director of Innovation. That role belongs to someone who didn't get there through connections, acknowledged or otherwise. But I'd like to propose a different role, something that bridges my analytical work with Meridian's future, a position focused on organizational culture, succession planning, preparing the next generation of leadership. You want to help other family businesses avoid our mistakes? I want to help them navigate the complexities we faced. Every family. Enterprise deals with these issues: the founder's dilemma, the burden of legacy, the challenge of raising grounded children in extraordinary circumstances. I looked at Dominic, who nodded slightly. We'd need to discuss this with the board, I said carefully. Create proper boundaries between your writing project and any official role. Of course, full transparency, ethical walls, whatever's necessary. And Oksana? His jaw tightened slightly. The divorce will be final in 6 months. Her lawyers are getting creative, but the prenup is solid. She'll get a settlement that's more than fair, considering she contributed nothing but chaos to our marriage. Bitter? Realistic. She made choices and so did I. But dwelling on bitterness would just poison whatever I'm trying to build next. He paused, then added with a wry smile. Besides, watching her try to explain her therapeutic recovery with Chandler to the society pages is entertainment enough. You've been following the gossip columns? Dominic asked, amused. Uncle, Stephen has a surprisingly thorough grasp of Denver social media. He sends me the highlights, or lowlights, depending on perspective. I couldn't help but laugh. Stephen reads society pages? Apparently, it's research for his next philosophy paper on performed identity in digital spaces. But I think he just enjoys the drama. The tension that had haunted our family for months began to dissolve in shared amusement. This felt like us again, the family that could find humor even in complicated circumstances. After dinner, we moved to the living room with coffee and the apple tart Kellan had brought from his favorite bakery. He pulled out a tablet, showing us preliminary outlines for his book. I want to structure it as a journey, he explained, swiping through diagrams. Not just mine, but the archetypal journey of inheritor children in complex family enterprises. The phases of ignorance, discovery, rebellion, integration. You're in the integration phase now? Trying to be. Though writing about it objectively, while still living it presents interesting challenges. I studied the outline more carefully. You're including a section on maternal leadership in traditionally patriarchal industries. How could I not? Your story is central to everything. A woman building an empire while pretending to be ordinary, specifically to protect her child from the corruption of extraordinary privilege. It's like a modern mythology. Careful, Dominic warned good-naturedly. Your mother's ego is healthy. Enough without mythological comparisons. I survived 3 hostile takeover attempts while pregnant. I shot back. I've earned a little mythology. Kellan's tablet chimed with an incoming message. His expression shifted as he read it, darkening slightly. Problem? Dominic asked. Oksana. She's threatening to write her own book if I don't include her perspective in mine. Of course she is, I muttered. She's calling it Married to the Machine, My Life Inside a Corporate Dynasty's Web. Dominic snorted. Subtle. She also mentions having intimate knowledge of Meridian's inner workings that shareholders might find interesting. The last traces of humor evaporated from the room. I sat forward, CEO mode engaging automatically. What could she possibly know? You were always careful about proprietary information. Nothing substantial. But she might have overheard conversations, seen documents I brought home during late-night work sessions. The danger isn't what she actually knows. It's what she might spin from fragments and conjecture. Coupled with enough personal details to seem credible, Dominic added. Exactly. Kellan closed his tablet with apparent frustration. She's trying to force her way into my project or create enough noise to overshadow it. Neither will happen, I said firmly. Her narrative has no foundation. Let her embarrass herself trying to monetize a failed marriage. You're not concerned about potential revelations? Kellan, I spent 3 decades compartmentalizing information across 17 shell companies while raising you and running a multinational corporation. If Oksana had anything concrete, she'd have used it in the divorce proceedings. He nodded slowly. You're right. This is just another manipulation attempt. The question is whether you'll let it derail your own work. No, he said with sudden conviction. I'm done letting her control my choices. The book moves forward as planned. Later that evening, as Kellan prepared to leave, he paused at the door with an odd expression. Mom, can I ask you something strange? Of course. That summer when I was 12, in the garage, were you really working on neural mapping algorithms, or were you actually reorganizing Dad's tools? The question caught me off guard. Both, actually. I developed a system for optimizing tool placement based on frequency of use and ergonomic efficiency. The mathematical principles were surprisingly similar to synaptic pathway optimization. Kellan stared at me for a moment, then burst out laughing. The first genuine, unguarded laugh I'd heard from him in years. Only you could turn garage organization into breakthrough neuroscience. Inspiration comes from unexpected places. He hugged me then, longer and tighter than the awkward embrace at my office. I love you, Mom, even if you are terrifyingly brilliant. I love you too, even if you did marry a social terrorist. His laughter followed him out into the night, and for the first time since this crisis began, I felt hope not just for reconciliation, but for genuine transformation. The following weeks brought a peculiar kind of normalcy. Kellan officially withdrew his resignation and transitioned into a newly created role, Director of Organizational Development and Legacy Planning. The board, initially skeptical, warmed to the idea after his presentation on sustainable family enterprise architecture. He's essentially proposing to study our own dysfunction to help other companies, Margaret observed after the meeting. It's either brilliant or incredibly presumptuous. Why not both? He is my son, after all. Kellan split his time between Meridian's offices and various libraries, conducting research for his book. He interviewed longtime employees, analyzing how the company's culture had evolved under anonymous leadership. His questions were probing, but respectful, seeking patterns rather than sensationalism. Oksana, meanwhile, escalated her media campaign. She appeared on a popular business podcast, describing herself as a survivor of corporate dynasty manipulation. Her stories grew more elaborate with each telling, painting herself as an innocent victim of the Voss family's machinations. I feel sorry for her, Kellan confessed during one of our working lunches. She's so desperate for relevance that she's turning our divorce into performance art. That's surprisingly compassionate. Uncle Stephen's influence. He keeps sending me Buddhist texts about attachment and suffering. He paused. Though he also sent me a compilation of Oksana's most ridiculous Instagram posts set to circus music. So the spiritual journey has limits. Our legal team monitored Oksana's activities carefully, ready to act if she crossed into defamation or trade secret territory. But her revelations remained personal, embarrassing rather than damaging. She's claiming you had a secret room in your house where you conducted business, James reported during one briefing. Complete with hidden computers and encrypted communication devices. Well, that's actually true, I admitted. What? The panic room. Dominic insisted on it after the fourth death threat. It doubles as a secure office. James stared at me. There were death threats? Occupational hazard of disruptive innovation. We handled them quietly. Is there anything about your life that isn't secretly dramatic? I make a very ordinary lasagna, with a secret ingredient you won't reveal. Everyone needs some mysteries, James. Kellan's research began yielding insights that surprised even me. He discovered patterns in family-owned companies that mirrored our own struggles. Founders who hid wealth to protect children. Heirs who rebelled against legacies they didn't understand. The delicate balance between preparation and protection. Look at this, he showed me during one of our sessions. The Ferrero family, the Nutella empire. They maintained strict privacy for generations, keeping their children out of the spotlight until they were ready for leadership. Sound familiar? Except their children knew about the chocolate empire. Did they? The current generation describes childhoods remarkably similar to mine. Modest homes, regular schools, parents who worked normal jobs while running a global corporation behind the scenes. I studied the data he'd compiled. You're identifying a pattern. More than that, I'm seeing a legitimate leadership philosophy that's never been formally documented. Stealth parenting for extreme wealth, a protective strategy that sometimes works brilliantly and sometimes backfires spectacularly. And in our case? Too early to tell. Ask me in 5 years. His honesty was refreshing. The arrogance that had characterized his behavior before the revelation had been replaced by intellectual curiosity and appropriate humility. 3 months into his new role, Kellan presented his first major initiative to the board, a comprehensive succession planning framework designed specifically for family enterprises. Traditional succession planning focuses on skills transfer and ownership transition, he explained to the assembled executives. But family businesses face unique challenges: emotional inheritance, value transmission, the burden of legacy. Our framework addresses these psychological and cultural elements, alongside financial and operational concerns. The presentation was sophisticated, drawing on research from psychology, organizational behavior, and family systems theory. I watched the board members' expressions shift from polite interest to genuine engagement. This is groundbreaking. Work, Margaret said afterward. He's combining disciplines in ways I haven't seen before. He inherited his father's ability to see connections and his mother's strategic mind, Dominic observed with quiet pride. Plus a healthy dose of therapy, Kellan added, overhearing us. Amazing what professional help and mountain air can do for perspective. The success of his presentation coincided with increasingly desperate attempts by Oksana to remain relevant. Her promised tell-all book failed to materialize. Publishers apparently weren't interested in her narrative without substantive revelations about Meridian. She's shopping around a reality TV concept now, Kellan informed us over dinner. Real housewives of tech dynasties or something equally awful. You seem remarkably calm about your ex-wife's continued antics, I observed. Uncle Stephen introduced me to this concept called radical acceptance. You acknowledge reality without letting it disturb your peace. Plus, her desperation is actually validating. If she had anything real on us, she wouldn't need to create fiction. That night, Dominic and I reflected on the changes in our son. He's becoming himself, Dominic said. Not who I expected, not who Oksana wanted, not even who he thought he should be. Just himself. It's what we always wanted, isn't it? Even if the path was more painful than we imagined. Pain teaches what comfort can't. You know that. Better than anyone. I did know. Every scar from my early business battles had become a foundation for later strength. Perhaps Kellan needed his own scars to build upon. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to my office. Chandler Morrison, himself having apparently ditched Oksana as her social capital dwindled. Mrs. Voss, he began smoothly. I believe we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. Have we been walking anywhere together, Mr. Morrison? I hadn't noticed. His practiced smile faltered slightly. I wanted to discuss a potential collaboration. My firm is interested in Meridian's new organizational development initiatives. The ones my son is leading? Precisely. His framework could be valuable across our portfolio companies. I leaned back, studying this man who'd tried to profit from our family crisis. What happened to your alliance with Oksana? That was a miscalculation. I thought she had insights into Meridian's operations. Instead, she had complaints about gift budgets and vacation planning. And now you want access to legitimate intellectual property? I want to explore mutually beneficial partnerships. Mr. Morrison, let me be clear. You attempted to weaponize my family's personal difficulties for corporate gain. You dated my son's ex-wife while she was still legally married. You collaborated with Harrison Blackwood until betraying him for the SEC. Why would I consider any partnership with someone of such flexible ethics? His mask slipped entirely, revealing cold calculation beneath. Because I have information about your competitor's neural interface projects that could accelerate your development timeline by 2 years. Are you offering to sell trade secrets? I'm offering strategic intelligence. I pressed a button on my desk. James, please join us, and bring security. Chandler's exit was less dignified than his entrance, escorted out by building security while James prepared documentation of his attempted corporate espionage. The vultures are getting desperate, James observed. Desperate people reveal their true nature. It's almost helpful. That evening I shared the incident with Kellan, expecting anger. Instead, he seemed thoughtful. A year ago, I might have admired Chandler's ruthlessness, seen it as smart business. And now? Now I see it as poverty, not financial, but spiritual. He's so focused on winning that he's lost sight of what's worth winning. That's a profound shift in perspective. Mountain air and Buddhist texts, he said with a smile. Plus, watching Oksana and Chandler operate made me realize something. They're not actually powerful. They're scared, constantly maneuvering because they have no solid ground to stand on. While you're building that ground for yourself, trying to, some days are better than others. His book progressed steadily, evolving from an angry memoir into something more substantial. He interviewed other inheritors from prominent families, academics studying wealth psychology, family business consultants. The work took on dimensions neither of us had anticipated. I'm finding this whole subset of people like me, he reported excitedly one afternoon. Heirs who discovered family secrets, children raised in deliberate simplicity by wealthy parents, people wrestling with legacy and identity. It's like there's this hidden society of confused inheritors. And you're documenting their stories? With permission, anonymized where necessary. But the patterns are fascinating. Almost every family had some version of our situation. Parents trying to protect children from wealth's corruption, children feeling betrayed by the deception, everyone struggling to find authentic relationships with money and power. Sounds like you're writing more than a business book. It's becoming a psychological study, maybe even a philosophical one. Uncle Stephen is thrilled. He's convinced I'm accidentally writing a modern economic treatise on virtue ethics. Are you? I have no idea. I'm just trying to understand why good intentions led to such complicated outcomes. His honesty moved me. This wasn't the boy who'd dismissed his parents as burdens, or the executive who'd sought approval through cruelty. This was someone genuinely grappling with complex questions. 6 months after our first confrontation, the divorce was finalized. Oksana accepted a settlement that was generous but not extravagant. Her book deal had fallen through, her reality show concept rejected, her social media following dwindling as people lost interest in her victim narrative. She's moving to Los Angeles, Kellan informed me, apparently reinventing herself as a wellness influencer. From tech wife to spiritual guide? The modern American journey. Though I do hope she finds some peace. Carrying that much anger must be exhausting. His compassion surprised me again. You've really let go of the resentment? Mostly. Sometimes it flares up, usually when I remember specific betrayals. But holding on to anger at Oksana would be like drinking poison to punish someone who's already left the room. More Buddhism? Actually, that one's from Dad. He texted it to me after the divorce papers were signed. Dominic's quiet wisdom had anchored our family through every storm. I made a mental note to thank him properly later. That evening, Kellan joined us for dinner again. A weekly tradition we'd reestablished. The conversation turned to his book's progress. The chapter on parent-child communication in high-stakes environments is challenging, he admitted. I keep wanting to defend your choices while also acknowledging the pain they caused. Both can be true, I offered. That's what's fascinating. Every family I've interviewed has this same duality: love and hurt, protection and harm, intentions and impacts. It's like we're all stumbling through the dark, trying not to break what we're attempting to preserve. Speaking of preservation, Dominic interjected, your mother has something to tell you. I shot him a look, but he just smiled, encouragingly. What is it? Kellan asked. I took a breath. I'm considering stepping back from daily operations at Meridian. Not retiring completely, but transitioning to a more advisory role. Kellan's eyebrows rose. This is unexpected. Why now? Because hiding for 27 years took its toll. Because emerging from those shadows has been simultaneously liberating and exhausting. Because maybe it's time for Meridian to evolve beyond its founder's constant control. Who would take over? Margaret's the obvious choice. She's been ready for years. And you trust her with your life's work? I trust her competence. More importantly, I trust the systems we've built. Meridian doesn't need me hovering anymore. Kellan looked thoughtful. This wouldn't have anything to do with your upcoming grandchild, would it? I nearly dropped my wine glass. What? Hypothetically speaking, if someone were to have children someday, would you want to be more available than you were for your own son? Are you? Not yet, but I've been thinking about it, about what kind of parent I'd want to be, what lessons I'd take from our experience. And what conclusions have you reached? That honesty matters more than protection, that children can handle more truth than we think. That maybe the best gift is showing them who we really are, flaws and all. I felt tears threatening. When did you become so wise? Mountain air, he said with a grin. And really good therapy. Later, as Dominic and I prepared for bed, I reflected on the journey we'd taken, from crisis to reconciliation, from secrets to truth, from a fractured family to something stronger than before. Do you regret it? Dominic asked, reading my contemplative mood. Any of it? The secrets? Sometimes. The protection? Never. The outcome? Ask me in 10 years. Fair enough. He pulled me close. For what it's worth, I think we did okay. Our son is finding his own path while honoring where he came from. Isn't that what all parents hope for? It is. Though I could have done without the international media circus and corporate espionage attempts. Where's the fun in a simple family drama? I laughed, settling into his embrace. Outside our window, Denver glittered against the mountains, the same view we'd shared for decades, yet somehow different now that our secrets had been unveiled. My phone buzzed with a message from Kellan. First draft of Chapter 1 complete. Dedicated to the woman who built an empire while making school lunches. Thank you for both. I showed it to Dominic, who smiled. See? We did okay. We did better than okay, I realized. We raised a son who can see the full picture, success and failure, love and hurt, intention and impact, and still find gratitude in it all. As sleep claimed us, I thought about legacies and what we leave behind. Not just companies or wealth, but the harder inheritances, resilience, integrity, the ability to transform pain into wisdom. These were the true gifts we'd given our son, even if the delivery had been imperfect. In the end, perhaps that was enough. Perhaps it was everything. The next chapter of our story was just beginning. 1 year after Kellan discovered my true identity, we gathered at Meridian's Grand Auditorium for the launch of his book, Invisible Inheritance: Family Dynasties and the Weight of Unspoken Legacy. The turnout exceeded everyone's expectations. Executives from family enterprises across 3 continents, academics studying wealth psychology, inheritors seeking answers to their own complicated relationships with privilege. I sat in the basho, front row next to Dominic, watching our son command the stage with quiet confidence. Not the performative authority he'd once projected to impress colleagues, but something authentic, earned through introspection and hard work. The question, at the heart of this research, Kellan was saying, isn't whether wealth should be hidden or flaunted. It's about honesty versus protection, and how parents navigate that impossible balance when trying to raise children who understand value beyond finances. Behind him, slides displayed quotes from the dozens of families he'd interviewed. Children who'd discovered vast inheritances only as adults. Parents who'd concealed empires to foster work ethic. The psychological impact of such revelations, positive and negative, documented with academic rigor and personal insight. My own journey began with anger, he admitted candidly. I felt deceived, manipulated, denied my birthright. But through this research, I came to understand that my parents faced an impossible choice: risk corrupting their child with privilege, or risk alienating him through necessary secrets. His eyes found mine in the audience, and I saw not resentment, but genuine understanding. There are no perfect answers, he continued. No one-size-fits-all solutions for families navigating extraordinary circumstances. But there are principles that can guide us. Transparency calibrated to maturity. Protection that doesn't become deception. Identity formed through values rather than assets. Margaret leaned over to whisper. He's really found his voice. She was right. The bitter, confused man who'd once called me a burden had transformed into someone thoughtful and articulate, capable of examining painful experiences with clarity and compassion. After the presentation, during the reception, I found myself surrounded by leaders from other family enterprises, all eager to discuss how they'd handled similar challenges. We told our daughters everything from the beginning, confessed Lydia Harrington, matriarch of a shipping dynasty. Thought honesty was the only ethical choice. Now they're in their 30s, attending therapy 3 times weekly to overcome their affluenza. We went the opposite route, countered Victor Chen, whose software company had revolutionized medical record systems. Complete secrecy until college graduation. My son hasn't spoken to me in 7 years, claims I stole his childhood. What struck me most was how each approach, full disclosure, complete secrecy, and everything between, had produced both successes and failures. There was no perfect formula, only imperfect humans trying to protect what they valued most. Kellan joined our circle, fielding questions with thoughtful consideration. When someone asked if he resented his upbringing, he paused before answering. Resentment implies that something was taken from me unfairly. But what my parents did wasn't about taking, it was about giving something they believed was more valuable than wealth or status. They gave me the chance to become someone based on character rather than circumstance. His gaze met mine, and I felt a surge of emotions too complex to name. Did they make mistakes? Absolutely. As did I. But those mistakes created the path that led here, to understanding rather than ignorance, to purpose rather than entitlement. Later, as the crowd thinned, he found me alone near the windows overlooking the city skyline. "Thank you," I said simply. "For what?" "For seeing beyond your pain, for finding meaning in our mess. I had good teachers, even when I didn't know I was being taught." We stood in comfortable silence, watching Denver's lights flicker against the darkening mountains. "The board approved my proposal," he said after a while. "The Family Enterprise Institute?" "Yes. We'll launch next quarter, a research center, dedicated to studying succession planning, next-generation leadership, and the unique challenges of family businesses. Entirely separate from Meridian's corporate structure, but funded through a foundation grant. Your own independent domain. Built on what I've learned, but not defined by either rebellion or legacy. Something genuinely new. I studied my son's profile, seeing echoes of both Dominic and myself, yet something distinctly his own. Have you told your father? Not yet. Wanted you to be the first to know, since technically you're both my mother and my largest investor. I laughed. I prefer to think of it as being your earliest supporter, in all senses. The Institute represented Kellan's vision, a bridge between his corporate experience and his emerging identity as a thought leader. He would remain connected to Meridian but independent, forging his own path while honoring the foundations we'd built. There's something else, he added, his expression shifting to something more personal. I've been seeing someone. Oh? I kept my tone neutral, though interest sparked immediately. Dr. Zara Ibrahim. She's a psychology professor specializing in family systems theory. We met during my research interviews. The expert on intergenerational trauma? He smiled. Of course you've heard of her. Yes, that's Zara. We've been taking things slowly, very slowly. She knows everything. About Meridian, about Oksana, about our family drama. No secrets this time. And she wasn't intimidated by any of it? Actually, she called our situation a fascinating case study in well-intentioned dysfunction, then immediately apologized for the clinical assessment. I laughed. I think I might like her already. You will. She's brilliant, compassionate, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. Challenges everything I say. It's exhausting and exhilarating. The way his face softened when he spoke of her told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the superficial attraction he'd had with Oksana. This was something built on genuine connection and mutual respect. When do we get to meet her? Sunday dinner, if that's not too soon. Your father will be thrilled. He's been complaining that I don't cook for enough people anymore. The following Sunday, our modest townhouse in Copper Falls welcomed its newest guest. Dr. Zara Ibrahim arrived precisely on time, carrying a homemade baklava and a well-worn copy of Kellan's book filled with post-it notes and margin annotations. Mrs. Voss, she greeted me with a firm handshake. It's an honor to meet the architect of such a fascinating corporate structure. Your distributed ownership model has become a case study in my colleague's business ethics seminar. No air kisses or fake flattery, just genuine professional respect. Please, call me Evelyn, and the honor is mutual. Your work on family narratives has been groundbreaking. She's already analyzed our entire dynamic, Kellan said with mock resignation. I've been diagnosed with approximately 7 different complexes. Only 3, and they're quite manageable, Zara countered with a smile that transformed her serious demeanor. The others were merely contextual adaptations to extraordinary circumstances. Dominic emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Zara, welcome. I hope you like lasagna with inexplicable secret ingredients. My favorite kind, she replied without missing a beat. Throughout dinner, I observed the easy rapport between Kellan and Zara, the way they referenced shared ideas, challenged each other's perspectives, and communicated through subtle glances. She was nothing like Oksana. Where Oksana had been calculated and performative, Zara was authentic and direct. Where Oksana had sought status, Zara pursued understanding. Kellan tells me you're considering a more advisory role at Meridian, Zara said as we moved to the living room with coffee. The transition is nearly complete. Margaret officially takes over as CEO next month. And how does that feel? Stepping back from something you built from nothing? The directness of her question caught me off guard. Most people tiptoed around such personal inquiries. Liberating and terrifying in equal measure, I admitted. Like watching your child take their first solo steps. Pride in their independence, mixed with the instinct to hover and protect. An apt metaphor, she smiled. though I imagine Kellan's first steps were less dramatic than Meridian's leadership transition. Actually, Dominic interjected, he knocked over an entire presentation board during a video conference with Japanese investors. Evelyn didn't miss a beat, kept presenting while simultaneously writing the toddler and the toppled easel. Multitasking has always been her superpower, Kellan added. Mine too, Zara said. Academic department politics make corporate boardrooms look straightforward. The conversation flowed naturally through the evening, professional insights, blending with personal stories, serious discussions lightened by genuine laughter. For the first time in years, our family felt extended rather than diminished. Not because Zara filled some missing piece, but because her presence reflected Kellan's growth. As they prepared to leave, Zara asked an unexpected question. Evelyn, I'm curious. When you were creating your hidden identity structure, did you consider the psychological implications for Kellan, or were you focused primarily on practical protection? Again, her directness was refreshing, if uncomfortable. Honestly, I thought I was choosing the lesser of two evils. Exposure to wealth's toxicity seemed more dangerous than the complications of dual identity. And now, with hindsight? I glanced at my son, standing tall beside this woman who valued truth above comfort. I'd make the same choice, but with more transparency as Kellan matured. Secrets have their place in protection, but they become prisons if maintained too long. Zara nodded thoughtfully. The developmental appropriateness of truth, that's the challenge every parent faces, just on a different scale. After they left, Dominic and I sat on the porch swing, processing the evening. She's remarkable, I said, and completely wrong for the son we thought we were raising, but exactly right for the man he's become. 6 months later, after Meridian's successful leadership transition and the official launch of Kellan's Family Enterprise Institute, our family gathered at Stephen's mountain cabin for a weekend retreat. Dominic and I, Kellan and Zara, Stephen, and his longtime partner, Marcus, just the 6 of us surrounded by autumn colors and mountain silence. On Saturday evening, as we shared stories around a crackling fire, Kellan surprised us all by raising his glass. A toast, he began, to impossible choices and imperfect outcomes, to parents who tried to protect while preparing, and a son who had to get lost before finding his way. His eyes met mine across the flames, filled with a depth of understanding that transcended our complicated history. 1 year ago, I discovered my mother wasn't just a bookkeeper, but the founder of Meridian Dynamics. I called her a burden, dismissed her wisdom, and lost myself in superficial success. Today, I'm grateful. For both the deception and the revelation, for both the privileges hidden and the challenges given. Beside him, Zara squeezed his hand encouragingly. The greatest gift my parents gave me wasn't wealth or position or comfort. It was the chance to discover value beyond those things, to build identity through character rather than inheritance. He raised his glass higher, firelight catching in the amber liquid. So here's to the burdens that break us open and the truths that put us back together. To family, complicated, imperfect, and irreplaceable. As glasses clinked in the mountain cabin, I reflected on our journey, from deception born of protection, to crisis born of revelation, to reconciliation born of understanding. None of it had gone according to plan, yet somehow we'd arrived where we needed to be. Later that night, while others slept, Kellan found me on the cabin's deck, watching stars sprinkle light across the mountain darkness. "Can't sleep?" he asked, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "Just enjoying the quiet. It's been a tumultuous year. Worth it, though." He settled into the chair beside mine. I've been thinking about something Zara said during one of our early conversations. She asked if I could simultaneously hold two opposing truths, that you acted out of love and that your actions caused pain. Wise woman. She is, and her question changed everything for me. Before, I could only see betrayal or protection, lies or love. But reality exists in the space between absolutes. A shooting star traced briefly across the sky, gone almost before we registered its presence. "Did I ever tell you about the real reason behind Meridian's name?" I asked. I always assumed it was about navigational precision. Finding true north. That's part of it. But meridians are also the pathways through which energy flows in traditional Chinese medicine. When they're blocked, illness follows. When they're open, healing happens. And our meridians were blocked by secrets and opened by truth, even when that truth was painful. He nodded slowly. "I get it now. Why you protected me the way you did. Why you built walls around our reality. And I understand why those walls had to fall. Why you needed to know the whole truth to become fully yourself." We sat in companionable silence, watching stars wheel slowly overhead. Not as CEO and employee, not as deceiver and deceived, but simply as mother and son, connected by something more enduring than secrets or success. "Mom? I never thanked you properly, not just for the material things, but for always trying to do what was right, even when it was impossible to know what right actually meant. That's parenthood in a nutshell. Doing your imperfect best with information you know is incomplete. Then you succeeded brilliantly." He smiled in the darkness. "Your imperfect best gave me the foundation for everything I'm building now." Morning found us all gathered around the cabin's rustic table, planning the day's hike. Kellan and Zara pored over trail maps, debating elevation gains with good-natured intensity. Dominic and Stephen argued cheerfully about optimal sandwich, construction for mountain excursions. Marcus photographed everything, documenting ordinary moments with artistic precision. Watching them, I felt something settle within me. A recognition that legacy isn't what we leave behind, but what continues to live through those we love. Not just genetic inheritance or financial assets, but values, questions, approaches to life's complexities. My son had called me a burden, then discovered I was his company's major shareholder. But the real discovery went deeper than corporate structure or hidden wealth. He'd found the truth that had always anchored our family. That worth comes from character, not circumstance. That power without purpose is empty. That being known is more valuable than being important. As we shouldered day packs and stepped onto mountain trails, I realized that the most precious inheritance wasn't Meridian dynamics or its billions in assets. It was this, the ability to walk together through beautiful and challenging terrain, supporting each other's journey while honoring each person's distinct path. The company would continue. The wealth would grow or diminish according to market forces. But the legacy that mattered most was already secure, alive in my son who had faced his inheritance, questioned it, rejected it, and ultimately transformed it into something uniquely his own. That transformation wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a new story, one we would write together, one step at a time, on the path ahead. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.